The ultrasound technician's hand froze on the wand pressed against my abdomen. Her eyes darted to the monitor, then to me, then back again. That hesitation, that fraction of a second where professional composure cracked, told me everything before the words left her mouth. "Mrs. Rivera, I need to get the doctor." "Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I'd come in for what I thought was a routine 12-week checkup. Instead, I was lying on paper that crackled with each breath, watching a stranger's face confirm my worst suspicions. The grainy image on the screen showed an empty gestational sac. A blighted ovum, they would tell me moments later. My body had been preparing for a pregnancy that would never result in a child. 3 hours later, I sat in my car in the hospital parking garage, the D&C procedure scheduled for the following week, and called my husband. It went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Voicemail. On the third attempt, I left a message, my voice surprisingly steady. "Daniel, please call me. It's about the baby." He didn't call back for 6 hours. When he finally did, I was sitting at our kitchen table, the prenatal vitamins I'd been taking religiously still sitting on the counter, mocking me with their cheerful orange bottle. "Mariella, hey, sorry I missed your calls. Crazy day at work." His voice had that distracted quality it always carried lately. "What's up with the baby?" "I need you to come home. I'm in the middle of something. Can you just tell me?" I closed my eyes, feeling the words stick in my throat like broken glass. "There is no baby. There never really was. I have a procedure scheduled for next week." Silence stretched between us. In the background, I heard something. A woman's voice, soft and questioning. "Está todo bien, amor?" My Spanish was rusty from disuse, but I understood perfectly. "Is everything okay, love?" Daniel's response came quick and sharp, also in Spanish. "Sí, es solo mi esposa siendo inútil como siempre. Nada importante." Yes, it's just my wife being useless as always. Nothing important. He thought I didn't understand. In the 5 years we'd been married, I'd never corrected his assumption that I was monolingual. My mother had been from Guadalajara, but after she died when I was 8, my father had discouraged Spanish at home, wanting to help me fit in better. By the time I met Daniel, my Spanish had faded to passive comprehension. I could understand far more than I could speak. A skill I'd never thought to reveal. A secret that had just become my most valuable asset. "Daniel," I said carefully in English, my voice hollow. "I lost our baby." "Oh!" Another pause. I'm sorry. Do you need me to come home?" The woman's voice came again, closer now. "Dile que estás ocupado. Tenemos planes." "Tell her you're busy. We have plans." "Actually," Daniel said, "I have this really important client dinner tonight, but I'll be home later, okay? We can talk then." I ended the call without responding. For a long time, I sat there, watching the sun set through our kitchen window, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The house we'd bought together 2 years ago suddenly felt like a stranger's home. Every piece of furniture, every carefully chosen paint color, every framed photo of us smiling, all of it felt like props in a play where I'd been the only actor who didn't know the script. My phone sat silent on the table. Daniel didn't call back to check on me, didn't send a text, didn't seem to remember that I'd just told him about losing the child we'd supposedly been trying for because he was with her, his mistress, the woman whose voice carried easy intimacy, who called him amor, who knew his schedule well enough to have plans with him. I picked up my phone and opened a browser, my fingers moving with strange precision. immigration and customs enforcement, work visa requirements, conditional permanent residence based on marriage. The words blurred together, but certain phrases stood out with crystalline clarity. Daniel was from Spain. He'd come to the United States 8 years ago on a work visa, sponsored by the international consulting firm where we'd met. 3 years ago, when we got married, he'd adjusted his status to permanent residence based on our marriage. In 2 more years, he'd be eligible for citizenship. All of it dependent on the legitimacy of our marriage. All of it requiring my cooperation. All of it suddenly, beautifully, completely within my power to destroy. I pulled up our joint bank account, scanning transactions with new eyes. Charges at restaurants I'd never been to. Hotel stays when he was supposedly traveling for work, but the locations didn't match his itinerary. Premium jewelry purchases I'd never received. The evidence had been there all along, but I'd been too trusting, too focused on my job as a senior immigration attorney, oh the irony, to see what was happening in my own marriage. A senior immigration attorney. I specialized in removal defense, in fighting deportations, in understanding every loophole and requirement of immigration law. I knew exactly how these cases worked, knew what evidence ICE required, knew the burden of proof for marriage fraud, knew how to build an airtight case. My phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. "Dinner running late, don't wait up." I replied, "Okay, feel better." Then I opened a new document on my laptop and began to type. The following morning, I called in sick to work. Not entirely a lie, given the cramping and bleeding that had started overnight. My body was expelling what remained of the failed pregnancy, a physical manifestation of endings. While Daniel was at the office, I went through our home with systematic precision. His passport was in his desk drawer, along with his permanent resident card. I photographed both, noting the dates, the visa stamps, the biometric information. In the back of the filing cabinet, I found our marriage certificate, our joint tax returns, the utility bills in both our names, all the documentation that proved we were a legitimate couple, or had been. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. His laptop was password protected, but I knew his passwords. He'd never bothered to hide them from his useless wife. Inside, I found a folder labeled VM, Valentina Moreno, according to his email exchanges. The woman's voice from yesterday had a name. The emails went back 14 months. Long, intimate conversations in Spanish, discussing their future together, complaining about me. Mi esposa no entiende nada. My wife doesn't understand anything. Planning trips together, sharing photos I couldn't look at for more than a second. In one email from 6 months ago, Daniel had written, "Solo 2 años más y puedo divorciarme sin arriesgar mi residencia. Entonces estaremos juntos de verdad. Just 2 more years, and I can divorce without risking my residency. Then we'll be together for real." He'd been counting down, planning his exit, using me as an immigration sponsor while building a life with someone else. I downloaded everything to an encrypted drive, then cleared the computer's history so he wouldn't know I'd been there. In our bedroom, I found more evidence. Receipts tucked into his gym bag. A second phone hidden in his briefcase, not even well hidden because he'd never imagined his useless, monolingual wife would go looking. The second phone was a treasure trove. Thousands of messages between Daniel and Valentina, photos, videos, voice notes. Their relationship was extensive, complex, clearly romantic. They said, "I love you" in ways he hadn't spoken to me in years. One text message from 3 weeks ago made my hands shake. "Mi visa de trabajo expira en 2 meses. Estoy nerviosa." My work visa expires in 2 months. I'm nervous. Daniel's response. No te preocupes, amor. Una vez que consiga la ciudadanía, nos casaremos. Todo saldrá bien. Don't worry, love. Once I get citizenship, we'll marry. Everything will work out. So, Valentina was here on a temporary work visa too, and Daniel was promising to sponsor her once he secured citizenship through me. They'd probably been calculating the timeline together, figuring out the fastest way to make their relationship legal while keeping me in the dark. I photographed every message, every photo, every piece of evidence that proved their relationship. Then I put the phone back exactly where I'd found it. By noon, I had everything I needed. Proof of adultery. Proof that our marriage was no longer genuine. Proof that Daniel had married me specifically for immigration benefits, with plans to divorce once his status was secure. Marriage fraud. A federal crime. I sat in my home office, the room where I'd spent countless nights preparing cases for clients, fighting to keep families together, arguing the humanity behind immigration law. And I began to prepare a different kind of case. Not a defense, a prosecution. My phone rang. Daniel's name appeared on the screen. Hey, he said when I answered. How are you feeling? Physically or emotionally? A pause. He never had known how to handle emotional questions. Both, I guess. I'll survive. The word choice was deliberate. Are you coming home tonight? Yeah, should be there by 7. Want me to pick up dinner? That would be nice. Chinese okay? We'd had Chinese food on our first date. It used to be our comfort meal. Now it felt like an insult. Perfect, I said. After he hung up, I looked at the evidence spread across my desk. 5 years of marriage reduced to files and photographs, dates and locations, messages and receipts. A relationship that had never been what I thought it was. My father called. I let it go to voicemail. He'd never liked Daniel. Had warned me that I was rushing into marriage with someone I'd only known for 6 months. But I'd been 32, tired of dating, charmed by Daniel's accent and attention, swept up in what I'd thought was romance. What I now understood had been calculation. The doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, but I checked the security camera and saw my best friend Nina standing on the porch holding a grocery bag. I brought soup and wine, she announced when I opened the door. Not necessarily in that order. You sounded terrible on the phone yesterday, and you haven't answered any of my texts. Nina swept past me into the kitchen, unpacking containers of homemade chicken soup, her grandmother's recipe, the one she made when anyone in her life was suffering. I'm fine, I said automatically. Mariella. She turned to face me, her dark eyes sharp. You lost a pregnancy yesterday. You're not fine. That's not how fine works. The kindness in her voice cracked something in my chest. I'd been so focused on the betrayal, on building my case, on maintaining control, that I hadn't let myself feel the actual loss, the baby I'd wanted, the future I'd imagined. Daniel has a mistress, I heard myself say. He's been with her for over a year. He thinks I don't speak Spanish, so I've been listening to him talk about me, about us, like I'm just an obstacle to get around. Nina's expression went through several transformations: shock, fury, calculation. As an ER nurse, she'd perfected the art of staying calm in crisis, but I could see the anger simmering beneath her composed exterior. Tell me everything, she said, pouring us both large glasses of wine despite the early hour. I did. The phone call, the overheard conversations, the evidence I'd found, the texts about citizenship and visas and their future together. Nina listened without interrupting, her jaw getting tighter with each revelation. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. So, she finally said, What are you going to do? I'm going to destroy him. The words came out calm, certain, not angry. Anger was too hot, too chaotic. This was something colder, more precise. Legally, I mean, I continued. Through the proper channels. I'm going to report the marriage fraud to USCIS. I'm going to file for divorce and contest any claim he makes to assets. I'm going to make sure he loses everything he gained by using me. Nina studied my face. You're serious? Completely. Good. She raised her wine glass. I always knew you had a spine of steel under all that professionalism. What do you need from me? A witness. Someone who can testify that I've confided in them about the deterioration of the marriage. Someone who's observed our relationship recently. Done. What else? Help me move my important documents and valuables to a secure location. Before I file anything, I need to protect myself financially. When? Tomorrow. He's flying to Chicago for a conference. He'll be gone for 3 days. Nina nodded slowly. You've already thought this through. I'm an immigration attorney. I know exactly what's required to prove marriage fraud. I've defended against these accusations dozens of times. Now I'm going to use that knowledge to prosecute. He has no idea what's coming, does he? I thought about Daniel's easy lies, his comfortable double life, the way he'd dismissed my loss yesterday like it was a minor inconvenience. None, I said. He thinks I'm useless. He has no idea that I own his entire future. Daniel came home that evening with Chinese food and a guilty expression. He'd stopped at the florist too. Roses, my supposed favorite. Though he'd bought them so rarely, I'd begun to doubt he remembered. I'm sorry about yesterday, he said, setting the flowers on the kitchen counter. I should have come home. I should have been there for you. I accepted his hug, feeling the familiar shape of his body against mine and feeling absolutely nothing. It's okay, I lied. These things happen. No, it's not okay. You're going through something difficult, and I wasn't there. I'm going to do better. The performance was impressive. If I hadn't heard him yesterday, calling me useless to his mistress, I might have even believed him. We ate dinner in the living room, watching a movie neither of us paid attention to. Daniel kept reaching for my hand, offering comfort with the same hands that had been on another woman's body. The duplicity was almost artistic in its completeness. I have to fly to Chicago tomorrow, he said during a commercial break. Potential new client, big account. How long? 3 days. But when I get back, let's do something. Take a weekend away, reconnect. That sounds nice. It did sound nice. It sounded like exactly what I'd wanted for months. Attention, quality time, effort. But now, it just sounded like another lie to keep me placated while he ran out the clock on his citizenship timeline. That night, lying in bed beside him, I watched him sleep. His face was peaceful, untroubled by guilt or consequences. Why would he be troubled? In his mind, he'd gotten away with everything. The useless wife suspected nothing. I pulled out my phone and opened the encrypted folder where I'd stored all my evidence. 14 months of infidelity. Explicit discussions of immigration fraud. Plans to divorce me once he secured citizenship. Promises to sponsor his mistress once he could. One call to the right office, and this man's American dream would become a nightmare. But I wasn't ready yet. The case needed to be perfect, airtight, unassailable. I thought about my mother, whose own husband had left her for another woman when I was 6. She'd fought through the depression, through the single parenthood, through rebuilding a life in a country where she'd always felt like an outsider. She'd taught me to be strong, to be independent, to never let anyone make me feel small. Mija, she used to say, When someone shows you who they are, believe them. And when they try to hurt you, make sure they regret it. I believed Daniel now. Believed what I'd heard in his voice when he called me useless. Believed the emails where he counted down the days until he could leave. Believed the evidence that showed he'd never loved me, just the green card I could provide. And I was going to make him regret every lie. The morning Daniel left for Chicago, I called in sick again. This time actually sick with grief and anger and the physical aftermath of loss. I'd scheduled my D&C for the following week, but the bleeding and cramping had intensified overnight, forcing me to make peace with the reality of endings. Nina arrived at 9 with boxes and her pickup truck. "Let's get you protected," she said, surveying the house like a general planning a campaign. We started with documents: my passport, birth certificate, social security card, diplomas, professional licenses, everything that proved who I was independent of Daniel. Then my jewelry, the pieces that had belonged to my mother and grandmother, my personal laptop and files from grad school, photo albums from before Daniel, when my life had been smaller but entirely mine. "Financial records?" Nina asked, packing a box of my law school textbooks. "I've been documenting everything. We have joint accounts, but I also have a separate account he doesn't know about, my emergency fund that I started contributing to after my mom died. There's enough there to cover divorce attorney fees and living expenses for several months." "Smart. I've watched too many clients get trapped in bad situations because they couldn't afford to leave. I swore I'd never be that vulnerable." We worked in efficient silence, cataloging everything we removed. Nina took photos of each room before and after, creating a record of what I'd taken and what remained. Legal protection in case Daniel tried to claim I'd stolen from our marital assets. By early afternoon, Nina's truck was packed with boxes that she'd store in her garage. The house looked almost the same. I'd been careful not to create obvious gaps, but everything that mattered to me was gone. "What about the wedding photos?" Nina asked, looking at the framed picture on the mantel. Daniel and me on the courthouse steps, both of us smiling, me in a simple white dress and him in a blue suit. We'd gotten married quickly, spontaneously, swept up in what I'd thought was passion, but now recognized as his urgency to adjust his immigration status. "Leave them," I said. "They're evidence, too, of what this marriage was supposed to be." Before Nina left, she hugged me tightly. "You're doing the right thing. You know that, right?" "I know." "Good. Because he deserves everything that's coming to him." After she left, I stood in my emptied house and felt the weight of decisions settle over me. Once I made the calls I was planning to make, there would be no going back. Daniel's life would be permanently altered. His career, his immigration status, his future with Valentina, all of it would crumble. Part of me, the part that had loved him once, or thought I had, hesitated. But then I remembered his voice yesterday. "Es solo mi esposa siendo inútil como siempre." Just my wife being useless as always. He'd had the chance to be honest, to end things before they got this far, to treat me with basic human respect. Instead, he'd chosen deception, and now he would face the consequences. I opened my laptop and began composing an email to the USCIS Fraud Detection and National Security Department. As an immigration attorney, I knew exactly what information they needed, what evidence would be most compelling, how to present a case that demanded investigation. But before I sent it, I wanted one more thing. Confirmation that my Spanish comprehension was accurate, that I wasn't misunderstanding or overreacting. I needed to hear him with Valentina again, needed to be absolutely certain. His second phone was still in his briefcase in the closet. I'd memorized his passcode. Opening it felt like breaking into a tomb, each message a memorial to everything I'd believed was real. The most recent text had arrived an hour ago from Valentina. Te extraño. ¿Cuándo vuelves? I miss you. When are you back? Daniel had replied with a voice message. I pressed play, and his voice filled my quiet house. The same voice that had said, "I do," 5 years ago, that had whispered promises in the dark, that had told me he loved me. Mi amor, regreso el viernes. No puedo esperar para verte. Estos días con ella son una tortura. Todo es una actuación, ¿sabes? La esposa dolida, el esposo arrepentido. Es agotador. My love, I return Friday. I can't wait to see you. These days with her are torture. Everything is an act, you know? The grieving wife, the repentant husband. It's exhausting. Valentina's response came in text. Solo 2 años más, mi vida. Entonces seremos libres. Just 2 more years. My life. Then we'll be free. Antes, Daniel replied. He hablado con un abogado. Puedo iniciar el divorcio en 6 meses y aún calificar para la ciudadanía si lo manejo correctamente. Ella no sospecha nada. Es demasiado ingenua. Sooner. I've spoken with a lawyer. I can start divorce proceedings in 6 months and still qualify for citizenship if I handle it correctly. She suspects nothing. She's too naive. I closed the phone with shaking hands. Not from sadness anymore. From rage so pure it felt like ice in my veins. Too naive. Too useless. Too stupid to know what was happening in her own marriage. Wrong on every count. I returned to my laptop and finished the email to USCIS. Attached were copies of emails, text messages, financial records showing separate lives, evidence of Daniel's relationship with Valentina, and his explicit statements about marrying me for immigration benefits. I explained that as an immigration attorney myself, I was familiar with the requirements for reporting suspected marriage fraud, and I wanted to formally report that my marriage to Daniel Santiago Rivera had not been entered into in good faith and had not been maintained as a legitimate marital union. I included my contact information and my willingness to cooperate fully with any investigation. Then I drafted a second email, this one to my own attorney, not an immigration specialist, but a divorce lawyer I'd referred clients to over the years. Rebecca Park was known for being ruthless in protecting her clients' interests, particularly in cases involving fraud or infidelity. The email outlined the situation and attached the same evidence. I requested an immediate consultation to begin divorce proceedings and asset protection. Finally, I composed a third email, this one to the State Bar's Ethics Hotline. As an attorney, I had ethical obligations to report criminal activity. Marriage fraud was a federal crime. My report would be professional, thorough, and completely protected under whistleblower statutes. 3 emails. 3 grenades with their pins pulled. I stared at the screen, cursor hovering over the send button. Once I did this, Daniel's life as he knew it would end. He would face federal investigation, potential criminal charges, deportation proceedings. His career would be destroyed. Few companies wanted to sponsor work visas for employees facing immigration fraud allegations. His relationship with Valentina would crumble under the pressure of legal consequences. He would lose everything. Just like I had lost everything yesterday. My pregnancy, my marriage, my trust, my future. Only his losses would be self-inflicted, earned through his own choices and lies. Es solo mi esposa siendo inútil como siempre. I clicked send on all 3 emails. Then I called the clinic and confirmed my D&C appointment for the following week. It was time to clean out what remained of false hopes and start fresh. Rebecca Park called me back within 2 hours. Mariella, she said without preamble. "I've reviewed your email and attachments. This is one of the most well-documented cases of marital fraud I've ever seen. You've essentially built the entire case yourself." "I know what evidence is needed." "That you do. I can have divorce papers drafted by tomorrow. Given the fraud involved, you have grounds for annulment, but I'd recommend divorce instead. It's faster and gives us more options for asset protection. Whatever keeps my finances separate from his when the federal investigation starts. Smart. The timing here is crucial. If you file for divorce before USCIS opens their investigation, you're protected from any claims that you reported the fraud out of vindictiveness. The marriage was already deteriorating. The divorce was already in motion." "Exactly." "When does your husband return from Chicago?" "Friday evening." "Perfect. We'll have him served with papers on Monday morning, at work, for maximum impact. By the time he realizes what's happening, all your assets will be protected, your accounts will be separated, and the federal investigation will be underway." "What about his citizenship application?" "Once USCIS gets your report, they'll flag his file. He won't be able to proceed with citizenship while under investigation for marriage fraud. If they determine the marriage was fraudulent, his permanent residency will be revoked, and he'll face deportation." The word deportation hung in the air. I'd spent my career fighting deportations, seeing them as tragedies that tore families apart. But Daniel had weaponized the immigration system, using marriage as a tool for personal gain. He'd made a mockery of the same laws I'd dedicated my life to upholding. "Good," I said. "One more thing," Rebecca continued. "Your report mentioned that his girlfriend is also here on a work visa that's expiring soon. If she's been knowingly participating in immigration fraud, helping him maintain a sham marriage, she could face consequences too." I thought about Valentina's texts, her casual discussion of their future once Daniel secured citizenship, her lack of concern about me as anything more than an obstacle. "Document everything you can about her involvement," Rebecca advised. "She's not your responsibility, but if she's been complicit in the fraud, that's relevant information for the investigation." After the call, I sat in the gathering darkness of my house. No longer our house, just a building I happened to still occupy, and felt the machinery of justice beginning to turn. My phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. "Client meeting went great. Miss you." I stared at the message, at the casual lie wrapped in false affection, and didn't respond. Instead, I pulled out his second phone again and scrolled through more messages between him and Valentina. The conversation from 2 days ago, before I'd lost the pregnancy, caught my attention. Valentina. "Crees que sospeche algo? Do you think she suspects anything?" Daniel. "No. Está demasiado ocupada con el bebé. Además, no entiende español. Podríamos hablar de esto frente a ella y nunca sabría." "No. She's too busy with the baby. Besides, she doesn't understand Spanish. We could talk about this in front of her and she'd never know." Valentina. "Qué conveniente. Aunque me siento un poco mal por ella a veces." "How convenient. Though I feel a little bad for her sometimes." Daniel. "No lo hagas. Ella tuvo suerte de casarse conmigo. Le di una vida que nunca habría tenido. No le debo nada." "Don't. She was lucky to marry me. I gave her a life she never would have had. I owe her nothing." The arrogance in those words was staggering. He truly believed he'd done me a favor, that his presence in my life was a gift I should be grateful for. He had no idea that I was the one who'd given him everything: a legal immigration status, a path to citizenship, financial stability through our combined income, a home, credibility. Without me, he would have had to leave the country or find another sponsor when his work visa expired. And now I was taking it all back. My laptop chimed with a new email notification. USCIS had acknowledged receipt of my fraud report and assigned a case number. The investigation would begin within 30 days, with potential interviews and requests for additional documentation. Rebecca had sent over the draft divorce petition. I read through it carefully, noting how she'd included allegations of fraud, infidelity, and emotional distress. The financial disclosures showed our joint assets, the house we'd bought together, our shared investment accounts, the cars. All of it would need to be divided. But my separate emergency fund, the one I'd been secretly building, wasn't listed. Daniel had never known about it. That money was mine alone, my escape fund, and it would cover my legal fees and new apartment deposit. I signed the divorce petition electronically and returned it to Rebecca. Then I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on the back porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. Somewhere in Chicago, Daniel was probably having dinner with his supposed client, or maybe on the phone with Valentina, both of them planning a future that would never materialize. They had no idea the trap was already closing. The next 2 days passed in a strange calm. Daniel called each evening, keeping up the pretense of the concerned husband. I played my part too, the grieving wife, the supportive spouse, the woman who suspected nothing. "How are you feeling?" he asked on Thursday night. "Better. Still processing everything. We'll get through this. We can try again when you're ready." The lie was almost beautiful in its completeness. He had no intention of trying again. In his mind, we had 18 months left before he could file for divorce without jeopardizing his citizenship. 18 months of pretending, of maintaining the facade, of keeping me useful. "Maybe," I said. "Let's just focus on us for now." "Exactly what I was thinking. I'll be home tomorrow around 6. Let's order in, watch a movie, have a quiet night." "Sounds perfect." After we hung up, I finalized the arrangements for Monday. Rebecca had coordinated with a process server who would deliver the divorce papers to Daniel's office at 9 a.m. By 9:30, his world would begin imploding. Nina stopped by Friday morning with coffee and solidarity. "How are you holding up?" she asked, studying my face. "I'm okay. Weirdly calm, actually." "The calm before the storm." "Exactly." I sipped my coffee. "He comes home tonight. I have to play the part one more time. The loving wife, the partnership we've built. Tomorrow I'm looking at apartments. Monday he gets served with divorce papers. Tuesday or Wednesday, USCIS will probably contact him about the fraud investigation." "Do you think he'll figure out it was you who reported him?" "Eventually, but by then it won't matter. The investigation will be based on evidence, not accusations. Everything I provided is documented, verified, factual. Even if he claims I'm lying out of spite, the evidence speaks for itself." Nina was quiet for a moment. "You know what's going to happen to him, right? If they determine the marriage was fraudulent?" "Deportation. Probably a ban on re-entry to the U.S. for at least 10 years, possibly permanently. Criminal charges if they decide to prosecute, though they usually don't unless the fraud was particularly egregious." "And you're okay with that?" I thought about my mother, struggling in a country that had never felt fully like home because the man who'd brought her here had abandoned her. I thought about all the clients I'd defended who'd made honest mistakes or fallen victim to bad legal advice, people who deserved second chances and compassion. Daniel wasn't one of those people. He'd deliberately committed fraud, used me as a tool, planned my discardment down to the month and day. He'd shown no remorse, no hesitation, no moral conflict. "I'm more than okay with it," I said. I'm ensuring it. Daniel came home Friday evening with flowers again, lilies this time, which I actually did like, not that he'd ever noticed the difference. "Hey, beautiful," he said, kissing my cheek. The performance was flawless. If I didn't know better, I'd believe we were a normal couple navigating a difficult moment together. We ordered Thai food and settled on the couch to watch a movie he chose. Some action film with improbable plot twists and dialogue that couldn't compete with the farce playing out in my living room. Halfway through, his second phone buzzed in his pocket. I'd recognize that particular vibration pattern anywhere. He tensed slightly, then relaxed when I didn't react. "Work email," he muttered, silencing it without checking. But I knew it wasn't work. It was Valentina, probably asking when they could meet up now that he was back in town. When the movie ended, Daniel turned to me with practiced concern. "How are you really doing? With everything?" "Some days are harder than others. The procedure is scheduled for Wednesday. Do you want me to come with you?" The offer was generous, almost believable. But I'd already arranged for Nina to drive me, having no intention of giving Daniel the opportunity to play supportive husband when his support was as fictional as our marriage. "That's okay. Nina's taking the day off to be with me. But thank you." He looked relieved, probably already planning how to spend those freed-up hours with Valentina. "I've been thinking," he continued, taking my hand. "Maybe we should see a marriage counselor. This has been hard on both of us, and I want to make sure we're communicating well." The suggestion was almost laughable. Marriage counseling for a marriage he was planning to end in 18 months. Therapy for problems he deliberately created. "Maybe," I said. "Let me get through this next week first." "Of course. No pressure." We went to bed early, his arm draped over me in a possessive gesture that used to feel comforting, but now felt like a cage. I lay awake long after his breathing evened into sleep, counting down the hours until Monday. 58 hours until the divorce papers, 72 hours until the USCIS investigation officially began, 120 hours until his life as he knew it ceased to exist. I'd spent 5 years being the woman he thought I was, supportive, naive, convenient. But I'd spent my entire life being the woman I actually was, intelligent, strategic, patient, and patient predators always caught their prey. Saturday morning, I told Daniel I needed to run errands and spend some time with Nina, processing emotions about the pregnancy loss. He readily agreed, probably relieved to have time for his own secret plans. "Take as long as you need," he said, kissing my forehead. "I'll be here." He wouldn't be there. Within 20 minutes of my leaving, his phone would ping with a text from Valentina, and he'd be out the door. I knew this because I'd been monitoring his patterns for days, cross-referencing his location data with his stated activities. The gaps were telling. Hours when he claimed to be at work, but his phone pinged from Valentina's apartment building, dinners that supposedly ran late, but actually took place at romantic restaurants across town. Nina picked me up, and we drove to the opposite side of town to look at apartments. Rebecca had recommended I move out before the divorce papers were served. It would strengthen my case and prevent any confrontations when Daniel realized what was happening. The third apartment we viewed was perfect. A 1-bedroom on the 4th floor of a converted warehouse, with exposed brick and large windows that flooded the space with light. It was smaller than the house, but it was mine alone. "I'll take it," I told the leasing agent. "When would you like to move in?" "Tomorrow." The leasing agent blinked. "That's quite fast." "I'm in the process of separating from my husband. I need to be moved out before he's served with divorce papers on Monday. Her expression shifted to understanding. Let me see what I can do. 2 hours later, I'd signed the lease and received the keys. Nina and I spent the rest of the afternoon transporting the boxes from her garage to my new apartment, along with air mattress and basic supplies from Target. This is really happening, Nina said, helping me unpack dishes. It really is. Any second thoughts? I thought about Daniel's voice calling me useless, about the messages between him and Valentina, treating me like an obstacle rather than a person, about the lawyer he'd consulted to time his divorce for maximum immigration benefit. None. My phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. When will you be home? I replied, a few more hours, having a good heart-to-heart with Nina. His response, take your time. Love you. Love you. The words were cheap, meaningless, deployed like punctuation in a sentence that meant nothing. I didn't reply. By evening, my new apartment had begun to feel like home, or at least like the possibility of home, a space that was mine, untainted by lies and betrayal, a place where I could rebuild. You should stay here tonight, Nina suggested. Start fresh. Let him wonder. Not yet. One more night of playing the role. Then it's done. I returned to the house. I couldn't think of it as home anymore. Around 8. Daniel was in the living room, watching a game on TV, beer in hand, looking perfectly content. Hey, he said when I walked in. Good day. Helpful. Nina always knows what to say. She's a good friend. The best. I sat beside him on the couch, close enough to seem like a couple but careful not to touch. On the TV, men chased a ball across a field, fighting for goals that mattered intensely for 90 minutes and then were forgotten, much like the last 5 years of my life. I'm going to head to bed early, I said after a half hour of pretending to watch the game. Still not feeling great. Want me to come with you? That's okay. Finish your game. In the bedroom, I packed a small overnight bag with essentials. Monday, I'd come back for the rest, but I wanted to be ready to leave quickly if necessary. My laptop, important documents, a few changes of clothes, my mother's jewelry. Everything that mattered fit in one bag. I'd thought about leaving a note, explaining everything in writing so he'd understand exactly what was happening and why. But the words wouldn't come. What could I possibly say that the divorce papers wouldn't convey more clearly? Instead, I took off my wedding ring and left it on the dresser. Let him find it whenever he noticed. Let him wonder. I climbed into bed fully clothed, listening to the sounds of the game downstairs, the occasional cheer or groan from Daniel as plays succeeded or failed. This time tomorrow, I'd be sleeping in my own apartment, free from the weight of pretense. Just one more night. My phone buzzed with an email from Rebecca. Process server confirmed for Monday 9 a.m. at his office. USCIS has updated the case status to under active investigation. Are you ready? I typed back. I've been ready since I heard him call me useless. Her response came immediately. Good. Let's make him regret it. I fell asleep to the sound of Daniel's laughter downstairs, his ease and comfort in his home. He had no idea this was his last peaceful night for a very long time. The predator didn't roar before the attack. The predator waited, watched, and struck when the prey least expected it. And Monday morning, Daniel would learn exactly what kind of prey he'd been foolish enough to hunt. Monday morning arrived with crystalline clarity. I woke in my new apartment, sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows, and felt the weight of 5 years of deception lifting from my shoulders. At 8:45 a.m., I texted Daniel. Left early for a work meeting. Have a good day. His response came immediately. You too. Love you. Those hollow words would be among the last he'd send me as my husband. I sat in a coffee shop 3 blocks from his office, laptop open, tracking the process server's location through the app Rebecca had given me access to. At 8:58, the green dot entered Daniel's building. At 9:02, it reached the 14th floor where his consulting firm occupied half the space. At 9:07, my phone rang. Rebecca. He's been served, she said. The server reports he looked confused at first. Then the color drained from his face as he read the petition. His colleagues were watching. Good. Mariella, you should prepare yourself. He's going to call. Probably very soon. I'm ready. I wasn't ready. My phone exploded with calls and texts within minutes. First Daniel, then again, then again. I declined each one, watching the voicemails pile up. Then came the texts. What the hell is this? Call me now. You can't be serious. We need to talk about this. Mariella, please. I silenced my phone and ordered another coffee. At 9:45, a different number called. I answered. Mrs. Rivera, this is Officer Patricia Chen from USCIS Fraud Detection. We received your report regarding suspected marriage fraud. I'd like to schedule an interview with you this week. Of course, I have availability any day after Wednesday. Thursday at 2 p.m. works for our investigation team. Can you come to our downtown office? I'll be there. After the call, I allowed myself a small smile. The machinery of federal bureaucracy moved slowly, but once engaged, it was inexorable. My phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Mariella. Daniel's voice was ragged, desperate. I'm calling from a colleague's phone because you won't answer mine. What is happening? Divorce? You filed for divorce? Yes. Why? What did I do? Is this about the baby? I know I wasn't there enough, but we can work through this. Danielle, I interrupted, my voice calm. Pare de mentir. Stop lying. Silence. Complete. Absolute silence. ¿Qué? His voice was barely a whisper. Dije, pare de mentir. Sé todo. Sobre Valentina. Sobre tus planes para el divorcio en 18 meses. Sobre cómo me llamaste inútil mientras perdía nuestro bebé. Lo sé todo. I said. Stop lying. I know everything. About Valentina. About your plans to divorce in 18 months. About how you called me useless while I was losing our baby. I know everything. The silence stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. You speak Spanish? His voice cracked on the last word. How long? My entire life, Daniel. My mother was from Guadalajara. I simply never told you because you never asked. You assumed I was monolingual, and I saw no reason to correct you. People reveal their true selves when they think no one understands. Mariella, please, let me explain. Explain what? That you married me for a green card? That you planned to divorce me the moment your citizenship was secure? That you've been with Valentina for 14 months? That you've been calling me useless, stupid, naive? My voice remained steady, clinical. I don't need explanations, Daniel. I need a divorce. We can fix this. Marriage counseling, therapy, whatever you want. What I want is for you to sign the divorce papers and make this easy. Because if you don't, I promise you, I will make this very, very difficult. You can't threaten me. I'm not threatening you. I'm informing you. I'm an immigration attorney, remember? I know exactly how these cases work. I've reported our marriage fraud to USCIS. They've opened an investigation. You'll be interviewed soon, probably within the week. Another long silence. Then, you reported me? To immigration? I reported us. Our marriage. The fraud. There was no fraud. We got married. We lived together. We We maintained a sham marriage so you could get permanent residency. You've said as much in writing, Daniel, multiple times. To Valentina, to your lawyer when you asked about divorce timing. Would you like me to read the messages back to you in Spanish so you're sure I understand correctly? I could hear his breathing, fast and shallow, panic setting in. You're trying to get me deported. No, I'm reporting a crime. What happens next is up to federal authorities, but yes, deportation is a likely outcome. Mariella, please. His voice broke. Don't do this. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I made mistakes, but we can fix this. Please don't destroy my life. You destroyed your own life when you chose to commit fraud. I'm simply ensuring the consequences find you. What about Valentina? Did you report her too? The investigation will determine her level of involvement. If she knowingly participated in immigration fraud, yes, she'll face consequences. Her work visa expires in 6 weeks, by the way. I'm sure you remember since you promised to sponsor her for a marriage visa once you got citizenship. How do you went through my phone. Your second phone. The one you hid poorly because you thought your useless wife would never look. I didn't mean those things I said. Yes, you did. That's the problem, Daniel. When you thought I couldn't understand, you revealed exactly who you are. A man who uses people. A man who views his wife as an obstacle. A man who commits federal crimes without remorse. Please, I'm begging you, withdraw the report. We'll get divorced quietly. I'll give you everything, the house, the money, whatever you want. I don't want your things. I want justice. Mariella. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but not from fear or sadness. From the pure release of finally speaking the truth after days of performance. Nina called. I saw the news on the legal gossip channels. Your soon-to-be ex-husband got served with divorce papers at work. How are you feeling? Powerful. She laughed. Good. Want company? Actually, I have a meeting. But tonight? Chinese food at my new place? I'll bring wine. Wednesday arrived with the procedure I'd been dreading. Nina drove me to the clinic, held my hand through the pre-op discussions, and sat in the waiting room while doctors cleared away the physical remains of the pregnancy that had never been viable. When I woke from sedation, Nina was there with water and tissue. How are you feeling? Empty, I said honestly, but ready to heal. The grief was complicated now, tangled up with betrayal and relief. I mourned the baby I'd wanted, the family I'd imagined, the future that had never been real. But I also felt freed from it. The weight of false hope finally lifted. Daniel's been trying to contact you, Nina said carefully. He showed up at the hospital asking for you. Security wouldn't let him up. He doesn't have rights to my medical information anymore. I revoked his access on Monday. He seemed desperate. Good. At home, my real home, my apartment, I rested on the couch while Nina made tea and ordered soup. My body ached from the procedure, but my mind felt clear for the first time in months. My phone, which I'd silenced for the day, showed 23 missed calls from Daniel, 14 from unknown numbers, and 1 from Rebecca. I called Rebecca back. How are you? She asked immediately. I heard about the procedure. Physically uncomfortable, emotionally exhausted. But okay. Good. I wanted to update you. Daniel's attorney contacted me. They want to negotiate a settlement. What kind of settlement? He's offering you the house, full equity, plus half of all shared investments. In exchange, he wants you to withdraw the USCIS fraud report. I almost laughed. That's not how federal investigations work. Once a report is filed, it's out of my hands. The investigation proceeds regardless of my cooperation. That's what I told his attorney. But Daniel seems to think you have some magic power to make this go away. The only power I have is knowledge, and I know he's facing consequences for his own actions. His attorney also mentioned that Valentina has been contacted by ICE. Her work visa expires in 5 weeks, and with the fraud investigation ongoing, it won't be renewed. I felt a complicated mix of satisfaction and regret. Valentina had been complicit, yes, but she was also another person caught in Daniel's web of deception. "What about her?" I asked. "She's looking at deportation too, unless she can find another visa sponsor quickly, which seems unlikely given the circumstances." "And Daniel?" "His citizenship application has been indefinitely suspended. His permanent residency is under review. If USCIS determines the marriage was fraudulent from the beginning, his green card will be revoked, and he'll face deportation proceedings." "How long does that process take?" 6 months to a year, typically, but he'll have access to attorneys, appeal rights, the full legal process. Nothing happens overnight in immigration court. Good. I want him to feel what I felt. The slow realization that everything he thought was secure was built on sand. Rebecca was quiet for a moment. "You know, I've handled a lot of divorces, but I've never seen someone dismantle their spouse's life with such precision. He had years to be honest, years to end things honorably. Instead, he chose deception. This isn't revenge, Rebecca. It's accountability." Thursday's interview with USCIS lasted 3 hours. Officer Chen and her colleague, a stern man named Rodriguez, walked me through my marriage timeline with meticulous detail. "When did you first suspect the marriage might not be genuine?" Chen asked. "When I overheard my husband calling me useless in Spanish to his girlfriend while I was miscarrying our baby. That was the moment I understood he'd never viewed our marriage as real. I provided copies of everything. Emails between Daniel and Valentina discussing their relationship and his immigration timeline. Text messages planning his strategic divorce. Financial records showing he'd been supporting Valentina while claiming to share expenses with me. Hotel receipts, restaurant charges, the second phone bill I'd discovered and documented." "You're an immigration attorney yourself," Rodriguez observed. "Did that make this easier or harder?" "Both. I knew exactly what evidence you'd need, so gathering it was straightforward. But I also know what's coming for him, and despite everything, that knowledge weighs on me." "Do you believe Mr. Rivera married you specifically for immigration benefits?" I thought about our whirlwind courtship, his urgency to marry just months before his work visa required renewal, the way he'd become distant immediately after receiving his permanent residency. Looking back with clear eyes, yes, I believe he saw me as a path to citizenship. The relationship was a means to an end. Chen made notes. "And you're willing to testify to that? Under oath?" "Absolutely." After the interview, I sat in my car in the parking garage, emotionally drained but strangely at peace. I'd told the truth, provided evidence, cooperated fully with the investigation. Whatever happened next was out of my hands. My phone rang. My father. "Mariella," he said when I answered. "Nina told me what's been happening. Why didn't you call me?" I needed to handle it myself first. "Are you okay? Really okay?" I thought about the question. Was I okay? My marriage was over. I'd lost a pregnancy. I'd reported my husband to federal authorities and likely ended his American dream. My life looked nothing like I'd planned. "I'm getting there, Dad. It's been awful, but I'm getting there. He never deserved you. I should have said something years ago." "You did say something. I didn't listen. Come stay with me for a few days. Let me take care of you. Maybe next week. Right now I need to be alone. Process everything. Stubborn. Just like your mother." The comparison made my throat tight. She would have told me to fight back. She would have been proud of how you handled this. After we hung up, I drove to my apartment and collapsed on the couch. Tomorrow I'd return to work, face my colleagues' questions, begin rebuilding my professional reputation. But today, I allowed myself to simply exist in the rubble of my old life, gathering strength for whatever came next. 3 weeks later, I walked into a crowded coffee shop and came face to face with Valentina. She was sitting alone at a corner table, staring at a laptop screen with hollow eyes. She looked smaller than I'd imagined, younger, more fragile. When she glanced up and saw me, recognition flashed across her face, followed by something that looked like shame. I could have walked away. Should have walked away. Instead, I bought my coffee and approached her table. "Valentina," I said in Spanish, "may I sit?" She stared at me, clearly shocked. You speak Spanish?" "My whole life. Funny how people reveal themselves when they think no one understands." She looked down at her laptop. "I suppose you hate me." "I don't know you well enough to hate you, but I do know you helped destroy my marriage." "I didn't." She stopped, seemed to reconsider. "That's not true. I did. I knew he was married. I knew what we were doing was wrong. I thought I loved him." Past tense? Present tense, unfortunately. But love doesn't excuse what I did. She met my eyes. "I'm sorry. For all of it." I studied her face, looking for deception, finding only exhaustion. "My work visa was denied," she continued. "I leave next week. Back to Barcelona. And Daniel?" "Still fighting the deportation. His lawyers think they can argue the marriage was legitimate in the beginning, that it only broke down recently. But," she shrugged, "the evidence you provided is apparently very thorough." "It is." "He told me you reported us, that you're destroying his life out of spite." "Is that what he thinks?" "That's what he says." She paused. "But I've read the divorce filing. I've seen the timeline. He lied to me too, you know. Told me you knew about us, that you'd agreed to stay married for his citizenship and were seeing other people yourself." "None of that is true. I know that now." She closed her laptop. "For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. He used both of us. At least you had the power to fight back." I sipped my coffee, considering her words. "What will you do in Spain?" "Return to my old job, probably. Live with my parents for a while. Try to forget this mistake." She smiled bitterly. "I came to America for adventure, for romance, for a new life. Instead, I got a visa violation and a broken heart. You committed immigration fraud, Valentina. That has consequences." "I know. I'm living them." She stood, gathering her things. "I really am sorry, Mariella. You deserved better. Better than both of us." After she left, I sat alone at the table, processing the encounter. I'd expected to feel satisfaction, triumph even. Instead, I just felt tired. Valentina was being deported. Daniel was fighting to stay, and I was rebuilding from ruins they'd helped create. There were no winners here, just varying degrees of loss. The divorce was finalized 6 weeks later. Daniel signed everything without contest, too focused on his immigration battle to fight over assets. I got the house, which I immediately listed for sale. Too many ghosts in those walls. Rebecca called with the final papers. "It's done. You're officially divorced." That was faster than I expected. He didn't fight it. Smart move, actually. His immigration attorney probably advised that an amicable divorce looks better than a contentious one. And his deportation case? Ongoing. Immigration court is scheduled for next month. His attorneys are arguing that the marriage was valid when it began, that the breakdown was gradual and recent, and that deportation would be an excessive punishment. Will it work? Honestly, probably not. The evidence of fraud is too extensive, but he'll appeal if he loses, which could drag things out for another year. I don't care anymore, I realized. The divorce is done. The rest is between him and federal authorities. That's a healthy attitude. How are you doing otherwise? Better. I started seeing a therapist. I'm focusing on work. I even went on a date last week. And? It was nice. Nothing serious, but nice. I'm remembering what it feels like to be with someone who doesn't have ulterior motives. After the call, I stood in my apartment, no longer new, now familiar and comfortable, and felt the weight of the past few months settling into memory. I'd lost a marriage, a pregnancy, 5 years of my life. But I'd gained myself back. 4 months after I filed for divorce, Daniel was ordered deported. The immigration judge ruled that the preponderance of evidence indicated marriage fraud, that Daniel's permanent residency had been obtained through false pretenses, and that he would be removed to Spain within 90 days. He appealed. The appeal was denied. Nina and I were having dinner when I got the news. I read the email from Rebecca, then set my phone down. "It's over," I said. "He's being deported. How do you feel?" I examined my emotions carefully, looking for satisfaction or guilt or triumph. Found only a quiet sense of closure. "I feel free." "Good. Because you are." Nina raised her wine glass. "To new beginnings." "To justice," I countered. "To both." We drank, and I thought about Daniel packing up his life, preparing to return to a country he'd left years ago, facing the consequences of his choices. I thought about Valentina, already back in Barcelona, hopefully wiser. And I thought about myself, moving forward, healing, rebuilding. The revenge had been thorough, perfect even. Daniel had lost his residency, his career in the U.S., his relationship with Valentina, everything he'd schemed and lied to achieve. But the revenge wasn't what satisfied me anymore. What satisfied me was the knowledge that I'd stood up for myself, that I'd used my skills and knowledge to fight back, that I'd refused to be useless, naive, or convenient, that I'd owned my power. 1 year later, I stood in a courtroom defending a client, a young woman from El Salvador whose husband had brought her to the U.S. and then threatened her with deportation when she tried to leave his abuse. "Your Honor," I argued, "my client entered this marriage in good faith. The fraud was perpetrated against her, not by her. She deserves the opportunity to adjust her status independently." The judge granted her petition. After the hearing, my client hugged me, crying with relief. "Thank you. Thank you so much. You're welcome. And you're strong. Remember that." Watching her leave, free from the threat of deportation and the abuse she'd endured, I felt the full circle of my journey complete. I'd used immigration law to ensure justice against Daniel. Now I was using it to protect others from similar manipulation. The system wasn't perfect, but in the right hands, with the right intentions, it could be a powerful tool for accountability and protection both. My phone buzzed with a message from Nina. "Dinner tonight? There's someone I want you to meet." I smiled, typing back. "Another setup? Maybe, but this one's actually worth your time. Trust me." I did trust her. After everything, I'd learned to trust my instincts, my friends, and my own strength. As I walked out of the courthouse into bright autumn sunshine, I thought about Daniel one last time. Wondered where he was, what he was doing, whether he'd learned anything from the experience. Then I stopped wondering. His story was over. Mine was just beginning. And this time, I was writing it myself. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.